What kind of parents trade their own daughter away to pay a debt? That was the question burning inside Lydia McKenzie's heart the morning her entire life changed forever. The day began with the strange kind of silence that makes a person feel something terrible is coming. The McKenzie cabin, usually full of noise from her younger siblings, sat heavy and tense. Lydia sat at the small wooden table, watching her father stir his weak coffee again and again, as if hoping it would somehow thicken. Her mother kept her eyes on her lap, twisting a dishcloth between her fingers. 19-year-old Lydia felt fear rising slowly in her chest. Serious family talks had never brought good news. "Lydia," her father began, his voice rough, "we need to talk with you." Her stomach tightened. Her mother finally lifted her eyes, already red from trying not to cry. "The beaver pelts were ruined," her father said. "The floods destroyed everything, and Samuel Stone wants his money back." Lydia knew that name. Everyone in the region knew the widowed mountain man who owned the largest homestead in the territory. A man respected, feared, and always alone. "What does that have to do with me?" she asked, though some part of her already sensed the answer. The silence that followed said more than words ever could. Martha, her mother, finally whispered, "Mr. Stone accepted our proposal. You will work in his home for 2 years. Our debt will be cleared." Lydia froze. "Work? As what?" "As a housekeeper," her father replied, unable to meet her eyes. "He needs help at his place in the mountains. You'll have food, shelter, and you'll help us survive." Lydia stood so fast her chair hit the floor. Her younger siblings jumped, already frightened by the heavy mood. "You sold me," she said. It wasn't a question. Her mother reached for her. "Lydia, please." "You sold me," Lydia repeated, her voice breaking. "How could you?" "We had no choice," her father snapped, trying to hide the shame in his voice. "If we don't pay, we lose everything. This is the only way." Quote. Before Lydia could speak again, the sound of hoofbeats echoed outside. Through the window, she saw a tall Native American man dismount a bay horse. He looked strong, steady, and official. Clearly someone important. Her heart pounded. "They're already here for me?" "Yes," her father admitted. Running Bear came earlier than expected. A firm knock sounded at the door. When her father opened it, the visitor spoke with respect but authority. "I am here for the girl," Running Bear said. "The boss expects her before midday." Boss, that word felt like a chain around Lydia's neck. Lydia packed her few belongings, a Bible, a portrait of her family, 3 dresses, some worn books, while her little sister clung to her waist, crying. "Are you coming back?" Mary asked. "I don't know," Lydia whispered, "but I will write." Her voice shook, but she tried to stay strong. When Lydia stepped outside, the cold March air hit her face like reality itself. She mounted the chestnut mare. Running Bear handed her, feeling her legs tremble. They rode away from the cabin without her looking back. If she did, she might break completely. The dirt road twisted through pine forests and open meadows. Lydia kept her eyes forward, refusing to let tears fall. Running Bear rode beside her in respectful silence. After a long stretch, she finally spoke. "Is Mr. Stone as strict as people say?" Running Bear took a moment before answering. "He is fair, demanding, and a man who carries deep hurt. His wife died 4 years ago. Since then, he keeps to himself." Lydia didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. They continued until Running Bear pointed ahead. "There is his homestead." Lydia's eyes widened. The Stone Ridge homestead stood like something out of a story, a grand 2-story cabin with polished log walls, dozens of windows, a wide porch around the entire house. Stables, bunkhouses, sheds, gardens, and even a chapel surrounded the property. Everything was neat, wealthy, and powerful. "Come," Running Bear said. As they approached, several workers lifted their heads, curious about the new girl. Lydia's heart raced. Waiting on the porch was a middle-aged Native American woman wearing a crisp apron and holding herself with authority. "This is Morningstar," Running Bear said. "She will guide you." Morningstar looked Lydia up and down, almost reading her soul. "You're the new girl," she said. "Come, I will show you your room." Lydia followed her into the house. The moment she stepped inside, she understood her life had changed forever. The entry hall was larger than her entire cabin. Furniture carved from local timber, clean floors that shined, paintings of wild landscapes hung on the walls. Morningstar led her upstairs and opened a small but tidy bedroom. "You will sleep here," she said. "The boss returns at dusk. You will meet him then." Lydia nodded, trying to catch her breath. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. She learned the kitchen, the chores, the library, and the rules of the house. Everything was quiet, controlled, almost too perfect. Then, just as the sun began to sink behind the snowy mountain peaks, Lydia heard the sound of hooves outside. Morningstar straightened her apron. "The boss is home." Lydia stood at the bottom of the stairs as the front door opened. Samuel Stone stepped inside, tall, broad-shouldered, weather-worn face, brown hair with gray near the temples, and eyes, sharp blue eyes that saw everything. He removed his hat, hung it on a peg, and finally looked at Lydia. She bowed her head respectfully. "Evening, Mr. Stone." He studied her for a long, tense moment. "How old are you?" he asked. 19, sir." "Do you read and write?" "Yes, sir." He nodded once. "Work hard, and you will be treated fairly." Without another word, he walked into the library and closed the door. Lydia released the breath she'd been holding. In that instant, she knew one thing. Nothing in her life would ever be the same again. How did two people who are supposed to stay apart end up drawn to each other again and again? Lydia asked herself that question almost every day as summer approached the mountains. Samuel Stone had been cold, distant, and formal when she first arrived. Yet with each passing week, she began to see tiny cracks in the walls he had built around himself. He was still a man marked by grief, but he was also something Lydia never expected. Kind, observant, lonely, and in quiet moments, gentle. Lydia's new life settled into a strict routine. She woke before sunrise, helped prepare breakfast, served Samuel his morning coffee, then cleaned the house from top to bottom, especially the library. The library had become her favorite place. One morning, while dusting the desk, she made the mistake of opening a book and losing herself in a Shakespeare sonnet. She didn't hear Samuel enter until his deep voice filled the room. "Do you like poetry?" She jumped, the book slipping from her hands. "I'm sorry, sir. I shouldn't have touched anything." "Answer the question." His tone wasn't harsh, it was curious. "Yes, sir. I love to read. Always have." Samuel picked up the book, glanced at the open page, then asked, "What do you think of this sonnet?" Lydia hesitated before answering honestly. "It speaks of love that stays even after death." Quote. He stared at her with a look she didn't understand. "Interesting interpretation. You may continue reading after your tasks are done." Then he walked out. Lydia stood frozen. The cold mountain man had just given her permission to read his most treasured books. That tiny gesture changed everything. From that day on, Samuel began leaving books open on the library table, always on meaningful passages, as if he wanted her to read them. As if he wanted her to understand him wordlessly. And Lydia noticed something else. Whenever she tended the garden, Samuel would step onto the porch with his newspapers and pretend he wasn't watching her. But she felt his eyes. Every time. One afternoon, while humming an old folk tune she learned from her mother, she didn't notice Samuel standing in the doorway of the music room. Her soft voice filled the quiet space, echoing off the piano covered by a white cloth. When she turned and saw him, she flushed. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know you were there." "Don't stop," he said quietly. "It has been years since music touched this house." Quote. He stepped forward and lifted the cloth from the piano. Dust rose in a soft cloud. Lydia could almost feel the weight of memory hanging in the air. "My wife played this," he said, resting his hand gently on the wood. "Every evening, after she died, I locked this room." Lydia swallowed. "I didn't mean to intrude." Samuel turned to her. For the first time, Lydia saw emotion, real, raw emotion, on his face. Perhaps it is time to open it again. He didn't say more, but something shifted that day. After that moment, their lives intertwined in small, quiet ways. They talked about books in the evenings. They walked through the garden when the sun began to set. They stood a little too close when discussing chores. They shared glances that lasted too long to be accidental. Samuel Stone, the man the whole territory feared, began to trust her. And Lydia began to see a man who was bruised by life but still capable of love. Everything changed the night he took her to the hidden room. It happened after they finished discussing a book. He stood up suddenly, nervous in a way she had never seen. "There is something I want to show you." He led her to a section of the library shelves, pressed a hidden latch, and a narrow passage opened. Lydia gasped. Inside was a smaller library. Warm, intimate, filled with rare books and a stone fireplace. "This was my father's private room," Samuel said. "After Rebecca died, it became mine." Lydia stepped inside slowly, taking in the quiet beauty of the space. "Why show me this, sir?" Samuel looked at her with a depth that made her heart race. "Because you are the first person since my wife's death who makes me want to share anything again." She felt her breath catch. The silence between them became heavy, charged with something neither of them dared speak. Then Samuel said the words that shattered the boundary between them. "Lydia, what is happening between us is dangerous." Her voice trembled. "Dangerous?" "Because you are my servant. Because society will not accept this. Because I could ruin your name." Lydia stepped closer. "What if I don't care what society thinks?" Quote, "You should," he whispered. "I cannot forgive myself if your life is ruined because of me." "And if it's ruined without you?" she asked softly. "If the real ruin is living without the person I—" She couldn't finish. Neither could he. But the truth hung in the air like a lantern flame flickering between them. He reached for her face with trembling fingers. She caught his hand in hers. Their foreheads nearly touched. Then Samuel whispered the truth that could destroy both of them, or save them. "I love you." The words felt like a storm breaking open. Lydia felt her eyes sting. "I love you too." He closed his eyes, fighting emotion hard enough to shake him. "My God, Lydia, what will we do?" Her answer was steady. "Whatever our hearts tell us." But hearts and frontier judgment were never easy companions, because the next morning everything began to fall apart. At breakfast, Samuel was distant again. Cold. Avoidant. Lydia felt the shift instantly. He barely looked at her. Barely spoke. Later that night, she found a letter on her bed. A letter that shattered her world. He was sending her away. With money. With a recommendation. With a wagon leaving at 10 a.m., Lydia read the words over and over, unable to breathe. He wasn't protecting her. He was abandoning her. Her heartbreak turned into fire. When she stormed into the library, Samuel looked up, guilt already in his eyes. "The letter explains everything," he said softly. "It explains your fear," she replied, "not our situation." He tried to speak, but she cut him off. "You think dismissing me will fix your reputation? No, Mr. Stone. You are not protecting me. You are protecting yourself." The mountain man who had faced wolves, storms, and death itself looked helpless before the young woman standing in front of him. Lydia leaned forward, voice steady as steel. "Marry me, or lose me forever." Samuel went pale. "Lydia, it's not that simple." "It is," she said. "Marriage or scandal. I won't live hidden in the shadows of your fear." Then she walked out, leaving him stunned. Samuel Stone, a man who feared nothing, spent the entire night wandering the house, thinking about every moment they had shared, every smile she brought back into his life, every piece of his heart she had awakened. At 3 a.m., he stopped outside her door and whispered, "Lydia, are you awake?" "Yes." She opened the door. Her eyes were tired but hopeful. Samuel took a breath. "I accept. Marry me, and we will face everything together." Lydia felt tears fill her eyes. "Are you sure?" Quote, "I am sure of only one thing," he said. "I love you." For the first time, he kissed her, a soft, trembling kiss that carried months of longing and fear. Outside, the wind swept through the pine trees like a blessing. Their fight had ended. But the real battle, earning the world's acceptance, was only beginning. What happens when a mountain man chooses love over society's rules? Lydia learned the answer in the hardest and most beautiful way possible. From the moment Samuel Stone asked her to be his wife, everything around the homestead changed. The mountain man, who once walked in silence, now walked with purpose. And Lydia, who had arrived as a frightened servant, began her journey toward becoming the Lady of Stone Ridge. But love on the frontier was never simple. The first person they told was Morningstar. She listened quietly as Samuel said, "Lydia will no longer work here. I intend to marry her." Morningstar blinked, taken by surprise. Then she nodded slowly. "If this is what brings life back into this house," she said, "you have my full support." It was exactly what they needed to hear. The transformation began the next day. A dressmaker from town arrived to sew Lydia a proper wardrobe. A retired teacher traveled from the settlement to teach her frontier etiquette, proper posture, conversation skills, and social manners. Lydia studied for hours every day, determined to rise to the role she had chosen, not for appearances, but because she wanted to be Samuel's equal in every way. Samuel watched her with a mixture of pride and disbelief. "You learn fast," he told her one evening. "I have a reason to," she replied with a small smile. Her transformation wasn't just in clothing or education. Lydia changed from the inside, gaining confidence, grace, and a strength that made Samuel fall in love with her even deeper. Their first real test came on a Sunday afternoon when Reverend Williams visited. The moment Lydia stepped onto the porch in her deep green dress, hair pinned in an elegant knot, the Reverend's eyes widened. "Miss McKenzie," he said warmly, "you carry yourself like a lady born." During dinner, Lydia spoke intelligently about books, asked thoughtful questions about the church's work, and showed kindness in every word she chose. After the meal, the Reverend pulled Samuel aside. "She is exceptional," he told him. "If your hearts are aligned, you have my blessing." Samuel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. With the Reverend's approval, the news of their engagement spread carefully through the region. Reactions were mixed. Some congratulated him. Others whispered that a mountain man should marry within his own class. No whisper was louder than Colonel Theodore Hamilton's. He had once hoped Samuel would marry his daughter. But now that dream was dead, and the man would not go down quietly. One morning he arrived at the homestead with a stranger, claiming the man was Lydia's long-lost uncle. "This is Samuel Brooks," the colonel announced, "Miss Mackenzie's blood relative." But Lydia had never seen the man in her life. Samuel Stone didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply requested legal proof. When none could be provided, the lie fell apart. And when Lydia's real father arrived shortly after, shaken and apologetic for the colonel's scheme, the truth became undeniable. The judge himself reprimanded Colonel Hamilton for attempted sabotage. The colonel left humiliated, and Lydia's name was cleared completely. With the last obstacle removed, preparations began for the wedding. A September date was chosen, when the mountain breeze turned gentle and flowers bloomed in Lydia's garden. The homestead filled with excitement. Morningstar oversaw decorations. Mrs. Eleanor prepared Lydia's gown. Samuel repaired the chapel's wooden benches himself. 2 days before the ceremony, Lydia's family arrived. Her mother hugged her tightly, tears running down her cheeks. "Forgive us," she whispered. "We didn't see your worth, but he did." Lydia hugged her back. Everything happened the way it needed to. The day of the wedding arrived clear and bright. The chapel glowed with candles and fresh roses. Guests whispered with excitement. Lydia's siblings watched with wide eyes, amazed that their sister, once sent away as a servant, now stood ready to marry one of the most respected men in the territory. Lydia walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her white silk gown shimmering in the afternoon light. Samuel stood waiting, more handsome than she had ever seen him, his blue eyes shining with emotion. When their hands met, Lydia felt everything inside her settle, like she had finally found where she belonged. Reverend Williams spoke gently. "Samuel Stone, do you take Lydia McKenzie as your lawful wife?" "I do," Samuel said, his voice steady. "And Lydia McKenzie, do you take Samuel Stone as your lawful husband?" "I do," she answered, tears slipping down her cheeks. When Samuel kissed her, the entire chapel erupted in applause. Lydia felt his hands tremble as he pulled her close. This man, once so afraid of society's judgment, now held her openly, proudly. The celebration that followed lasted long into the night. There was music, dancing, laughter, and enough joy to fill the once silent house 1,000 times over. Lydia was no longer a servant. She was the Lady of Stone Ridge. 1 year later, Lydia sat at her desk in her own office, a place Samuel had built for her, organizing plans for the school she created for the children of rural workers. She had also helped open a small clinic and a reading program for frontier families. Her life had become bigger than she ever dreamed. Samuel entered the room holding a letter, smiling. "Lydia, your work is being recognized in Denver." But Lydia wasn't listening. Her hand rested gently over her stomach. "Samuel," she whispered, "I'm expecting our child." Samuel froze. Then pure joy spread across his face. "My love, after everything we fought for, this is the greatest gift of all." He knelt, placing his hand over hers. Tears filled both their eyes. They had fought society. They had fought fear. They had fought their own pasts. And love had won. When the baby was born in spring, the entire settlement celebrated. People who had once doubted their marriage now admired the woman Lydia had become, and the man Samuel had allowed himself to be. Years later, when their children asked how they fell in love, Lydia and Samuel would always answer the same. Love grows in the most unexpected places if you're brave enough to choose it. And in the mountains of the Colorado Territory, their love became a story told for generations, a reminder that sometimes the people the world devalues become the ones who change it forever. Because a girl once given away as a maid had become the heart of a mountain homestead. And the widowed mountain man who once lived in silence found his life again in her love.